Just saw the movie called White Boy Rick. I actually didn't really want to go to it, but I started watching it because I had seen a negative review and I thought it was just going to be a bunch of F bombs and, seedy scenes of Detroit doing drugs, this and that. But it actually turned out to be a little bit more better than that. Not as bad as I was expecting. I mean, still a lot of F words and violence, of course, but it tells a story, a real story, a true story of this young man who they nicknamed White Boy Rick, living in Detroit, Michigan, as he started getting involved with drug dealing back in the 80s. I actually grew up in Grand Rapids, Michigan, so it was fun just to watch some of the scenes they showed uh, of Michigan, of the old houses there, and it was in the winter most of the time there, and so they were showing the snow on the road and some of the 80s cars they were driving. I mean, when I was 85, I was just graduating from high school. Now, Detroit's a lot different than Grand Rapids, but there's still a lot of similarities as well in terms of the houses, and there's some areas there that are, Grand Rapids is not a huge town. It's a lot bigger now than it was back when I was growing up. It's stretched out now, a lot more suburban stuff, but I lived near well, the part I lived in was just a middle class area, but we went to church in sort of the inner city, and so we mixed with a lot of the people of all socioeconomics there. My grandfather was East Grand Rapids, upper socioeconomics, founder of Butterball, and they supply all the butter to McDonald's. But I myself grew up in a pretty average middle class area. Once in a while we'd go visit Grandpa. He lived in a big mansion. But I think my mom, the more I analyzed my mom, she wanted to be poor. Not poor, real poor, but she wanted to be like ordinary, and because she kind of, she started out, in a basic apartment in Chicago, but then they got rich, moved to Grand Rapids, and lived in a mansion when she was in junior high and high school. And I think she just despised it, actually. She did not like the so-called rich life. So she got married to my dad, he's a minister, but pretty average income in terms of where he grew up. Most ministers back in that day, and now you got some mega church ministers who are making a lot of money, but back in that day, being in the ministry was not a lucrative job. So she liked playing poor, or at least middle class, average. I mean, we weren't poor compared to some of the real poor, but for her it was like playing poor because she kind of had the rich life for a while there. And so they would take us to a church in the inner city, and so that was like their way of, kind of showing how much they cared. And I didn't know all this, what was going on back then. I didn't know how their minds were working in terms of understanding why they were going to that church. And some of the strange responses she would make because she was playing a part. She was trying to, it was kind of like being an actress for 20 or whatever years, and then they moved out here to California, and suddenly she changed again, sort of. My dad took a job at a higher paying church, kind of known for being wealthy, and he's no longer with us anymore, but for about another 20 years they were playing wealthy. So it was weird, but I mean, how does that fit in with this? Well, it just reminded me of looking at the pictures they showed, the footage of Michigan in the winter in the 80s. That was like something I grew up with, not in Detroit, but in Grand Rapids. But I'm not saying I grew up poor. I grew up average middle class, but kind of like our family sort of played poor. I don't know why. Oh, I do know why, because of my mom, but my dad didn't want to be poor. He thought he was marrying into wealth. Crazy irony, you know. But anyways, for Christians, let us pray. This kid got involved in drugs. I had friends who were average income, but even they were still more than the real poor, better off than the real poor. But some of their houses that they lived in were just like some of the houses they showed in this footage in Detroit. Not the abandoned old houses, just basic, decent, lower middle class houses. And I didn't get involved in drugs really. We didn't have that problem so much in Grand Rapids. That was the crack epidemic, they said, in Detroit at the time. And that's what this kid got involved with. And eventually he got busted for it and went to prison. But it was interesting how they sort of made the dichotomy between black and white there in Detroit. How there was a difference in treatment, but this white kid actually he's still in prison apparently. So he did not get any kind of preferential treatment for sure. All I can think of right now, and I'll probably add more in the box below, is just to pray for those who are addicted to drugs and alcohol and whatever else it may be, to be released from those demons and find a new way of living. And I'll add more later. God be with you all and bless you.